Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be in Daniel chapter 1, where we see him in the pagan palace. We begin in Daniel chapter 1 and verse 1 in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. We looked in our introduction at the build-up on how these world powers had taken shape. But now, as our story opens, we see Nebuchadnezzar coming against Jerusalem, against the king there, Jehoiakim, besieging it and capturing him. Verse 2, the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the vessels of the house of God. This is the temple. Now, the temple's not destroyed at this time, but Nebuchadnezzar pillages it and takes some of the valuables. Notice, and he brought them to the land of Shinar. Shinar is what they called Mesopotamia or Babylon, to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasury of his God. So notice, it's sort of God against God, the pagan god of Nebuchadnezzar against the God of Israel, and it looks like the God of Israel has lost. Nebuchadnezzar thinks that's the case, although notice it was the Lord, it was Yahweh, it was the God of Israel who had given Jehoiakim into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. And so, as our story opens, Nebuchadnezzar's won, and he brings not just some of the vessels, but we're going to find out he brings certain of the young nobility as hostages. He's bringing them to Babylon, where they are going to be treated well. In fact, they're going to be trained to be good Babylonians. Verse 3, then the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of his officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal family and of the nobles. These aren't going to be kings, but they're extended royalty, part of the family of Jehoiakim who'd been captured. Youths in whom was no defect, who were good looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had ability for serving in the king's court. These are going to be servants of the king, public servants, we might call them. And he ordered him, that is, this official, to teach them the literature, the sefer, the writing technically, and the language, the tongue of the Chaldeans. Now, to learn the writing of the Chaldeans, you can't just, you're going to have, yes, to learn language, but it's a different writing system as well. Among the Jews, you had the use of an alphabet, 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. But among the Chaldeans, they had a different writing system. The cuneiform writing system wasn't just a matter of learning 22 letters and you're done. Their cuneiform alphabet is much, much more extensive, hundreds, if not thousands, of letters that make up these wedge-shaped characters. And it took quite a long time to learn. It took quite a bit of intelligence to learn. And here were some people that had the ability to do this learning. Verse 5, the king appointed for them a daily ration from the king's choice food and from the wine which he drank, and appointed that they should be educated 3 years. It would take about that long to learn not just the language, but also the writing techniques, at the end of which they were to enter the king's personal service. And of course, the idea is he's going to have some Israelite people, some Jewish people, but who will have been indoctrinated into the language, the customs, the learning of the Babylonians. So they will be future leaders. That's what he's planning on. And they will lead in a Babylonian fashion. Verse 6, now among them from the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And the first thing that happens is that new set names are assigned to these four. Now they have Jewish names. Daniel, for example, Dan is the word for judge. So Daniel, God is judge, but his name is going to be changed to Belteshazzar, which means may Bel protect his life. So Bel was one of the pagan gods. You have Hananiah, means Yahweh is gracious, or the gift of Yahweh. His name is going to be renamed Shadrach, a Babylonian name, meaning command of the Ak part is short for Aku, so the command of Aku. Uh, Mishael, his name, which means who or what is God, or who is what is God, is going to be, his name will be changed to Mishak. Again, that Ak part stands for Aku. So who is what Aku is. And then Azariah, his name, which means who Yahweh helps, will be changed to Abednego. Abednego means just the servant of Nego or Nebo. Again, one of those pagan gods, the same god after which Nebuchadnezzar had been named. And so these new names are going to be part of their new identity, and we're going to see those names being used, at least some of them. We're going to continue just out of habit speaking about Daniel, but these other names will be used in the next chapter. And the idea is change their name, change their identity, change who they are, and change what they believe. Verse 8, but Daniel made up his mind that he would not, now he's going to go along with a name change, but that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. See, um, under the Mosaic law, there were certain things they were to eat and certain things they were to drink and certain things that they were not to eat or drink that would defile them. And so Daniel, even though he's going to be learning new languages and new writing styles, and he will have a new name, he still wants to keep his obedience to the Lord with regard to eating and drinking. And so to do this, notice how he does this in a very respectful manner. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he might not defile himself. Verse 9, now God granted Daniel favor. God hasn't gone on vacation. God hasn't stayed behind in Israel. God is omnipresent and he is there. And notice God had granted favor and compassion in the sight of the commander of the officials. And the commander of the officials said to Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord, the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking more haggard than the youths who were your own age? Then you would make me forfeit my head to the king. You're going to get me in trouble with the king if I don't feed you properly and you come out looking sort of famished, and my life is going to be on the line. Verse 11, but Daniel said to the overseer, whom the commander of the officials had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants and notice we're going to have this period of testing for 10 days. And let us be given some vegetables to eat and water to drink. And this isn't just a thing about how being a vegetarian is better than being a meat eater, but remember the call is to avoid those foods that are unclean, and for the most part, those would be animal foods that would not be kosher. Verse 13, he continues, then let our appearance be observed in your presence and the appearance of the youths who are eating the king's choice food, and deal with your servants according to what you see. Verse 14, so he listened to them in this matter, and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, notice the 10 and 10, we're going to see that number 10 a few times here in the book of Daniel, especially here in chapter 1. At the end of 10 days, their appearance seemed better and they were fatter. Now, living in the United States of America, I hear fatter and I think, oh my goodness, I need to go on a diet. But that's because I'm not living in that ancient culture. In that ancient culture, when so many people were on the verge of starvation, to have a little bit of weight on yourself was considered a sign of prosperity. And so they were showing this prosperity in their bodies, and all the youths who had been eating the king's choice food. Verse 16, so the overseer continued to withhold their choice food and the wine they were to drink and kept giving them vegetables. It had been good for the trial period, and now it continues on for beyond the trial. Verse 17, as for these 4 youths, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom, And what's more, Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams. And that's setting us up for what we're going to be reading about in the coming chapters. Then, at the end of the days which the king had specified for presenting them, the commander of the officials presented them before Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and out of them not all, or out of them all, not one was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's personal service. These were, can I say it, head and shoulders above the rest. And we're going to see these continue on into the following chapters. Sometimes it'll be Daniel, sometimes it will be his three friends. Verse 20, as for every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king consulted them, he found them, oh, there it is, 10 again, 10 times better than all the magicians and conjurers who were in all his realm. And that's getting us ready to read about the stories that follow, in which they will be seen to be better and more trustworthy, even not just in the eyes of God, but even in the eyes of this pagan king. Verse 21, and Daniel continued until the first year of Cyrus. Now, Cyrus is the Persian king. So our story begins with that first deportation, 605, or maybe a little bit thereafter, 605 BC. And Daniel will continue until Cyrus captures the city of Babylon in the year 539 BC. That's a distance, just do the math, of over 60 years. So Daniel's going to, and remember, Daniel's not being born in 605. He's already a young one, perhaps a teenager. And so he's going to be in his 70s or even later. So Daniel's going to live to be an old man in the service of first Babylon, but then eventually the Persians, as Cyrus captures the city of Babylon. Now, some closing thoughts. First of all, we see the story of faithfulness in a far country. How often do college kids or maybe high school kids go away from home, and as soon as they're out from their parents' influence, it's it's kids gone wild. But Daniel and his three friends resolved to be faithful in this far country. Not only that, we see the value of these faithful friends. Now, we're not always going to see them together. We'll see at times that the three friends are together and that Daniel won't be mentioned, and we'll see Daniel off by himself at times. But at least at this beginning period, this sort of friendly coalition of four friends from far away are perhaps encouraging one another in their faithfulness. And likewise, we can be encouraged. Who you choose as your friends will encourage you, will lift you up, or will bring you down. Do your friends are going to influence you. Do you have friends that influence you in a positive and in a faithful way? Thirdly, I want you to see the commitment to obedience. Daniel had resolved, and his friends come alongside him. They benefit from this. He had resolved to obey the Lord and the Lord's law. Yes, he's going to be in a far country. Yes, he's going to be learning the customs, the language, the writing styles of this far country. But in that, he will still commit to obeying the Lord. Finally, I want you to see the lasting legacy. You see, Daniel begins when he's just a young fellow, perhaps a teenager, but we're going to see that legacy of faithfulness continue throughout his entire life. Do not wait until you are old to serve the Lord. How does Ecclesiastes chapter 12 put it? Remember the Lord in the days of your youth, so that that path might be continued throughout your long life. This is told the story of a sign at the beginning of an old country road. And if you've been on a country road, they're not paved, they're not even gravel or dirt roads. Sometimes they are just a series of ruts. And the sign said, choose your rut carefully. You will be in it for a very long time. Likewise, as you are young, choose your path carefully, because habits will be formed which will take you to the rest of your life. Make it your habit to serve the Lord, to hold to him in faith, to hold to Jesus who died for your sins in faith upon the cross, so that you might continue in faith throughout your entire life.